wave frequency theory, viscoplastic energy, topological geometry, pathophysiology, and metabolic induced stroke, number 1459, December 6, 2025, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category, Medical Research Methodology. Preface. After my hemorrhagic stroke on June 21, 2025, I re-examined my collected dataset of the past 16 years, from 2010 to 2025, of body weight, BW, glucose, T2D, and blood pressure, BP, using wave theory from physics. Every biomedical signal cycles like a wave, with its own characteristic period and frequency. These frequencies load the vascular system, with different levels of stress energy. Over decades, this repeated loading shapes chronic disease and determines when and how a catastrophic event, such as a heart attack or stroke, occurs. My three main physiological cycles produce the following approximate periods and frequencies. Periods: weight, BW, changes every 3 hours. Glucose, T2D, changes every 5 minutes. Blood pressure, BP, changes every minute. Frequencies: weight, BW, 0.1 mHz, slow. Glucose, T2D, 3 mHz, medium. Blood pressure, BP, 17 mHz, fast. From a frequency viewpoint, these three waves played very different roles in my life. 1. Weight created the overall background deformation, which led into metabolic disorders, such as diabetes, hypertension, dyslipidemia. 2. Glucose caused the greatest cumulative vascular structural damage, such as vascular calcification. 3. Blood pressure delivered the final trigger of the catastrophic event, such as a stroke. My three frequency numbers for weight, glucose, and blood pressure match real human physiology and are documented in many medical studies. Weight changes slowly, mainly driven by meals, hydration, digestion, and sleep, so a cycle of about 3 hours is reasonable for modeling long-term metabolic load. Glucose changes much faster, with natural oscillations every few minutes due to insulin action, liver glucose release, and muscle uptake. This is exactly the time scale seen in continuities monitoring devices, CGM, studies, so my 5-minute cycle is medically accurate. Blood pressure shows multiple natural rhythms, including beat-to-beat, breathing-related waves, and slower autonomic waves. A cycle around 1 minute is acceptable as a simplified representation of slow BP oscillation, used for long-term stress energy integration. The key ordering of these three wave frequencies in my study is correct. Glucose is the fastest signal, blood pressure is intermediate, and weight is the slowest. This hierarchy reflects true physiological behavior. My selected frequencies come from my own observations. Over 16 years of self-monitoring and recording. They fall within known biomedical ranges and are appropriate for building a wave-based, strain stress energy model of chronic disease and stroke risk. Introduction. This article explains how these three instructive frequencies, weight, glucose, and blood pressure, interact inside the human body using pathophysiology, physics-based viscoplastic energy, VMT, and mathematics-based geometric shape analysis, TDA. In this paper, I have also included 4 key elements. 1. Wave frequency reasoning. 2. Pathophysiological illustration and traditional biomedical explanation. 3. My VMT energy domain narrative explanation. 4. My TDA geometric shape and data connectivity narrative interpretation. In this particular paper, I decide not to perform actual numerical calculations, because I already have sufficient confidence in my conclusions. These 4 key layers already satisfy the structural requirements of my defined viscoplastic topology. VPT is VMT plus TDA, research paper. Body weight wave, low frequency deformation, 0.1 mHz. My weight changes every from 3 to 4 hours due to eating, drinking, walking, bowel movement, and sleep. This slow wave does not oscillate enough to cause direct mechanical damage, but it creates a long-term baseline shift. In physics, low frequency, loading slowly but steadily deforms a structure without recovery. In physiology, this corresponds to long-term obesity creating insulin resistance, which is the root cause of type 2 diabetes. Weight did not break anything directly. It created the metabolic environment, in which diabetes could grow and persist for decades. Glucose wave, middle frequency fatigue, 3 mHz. I use the Libre CGM sensor on my upper arms to measure my glucose levels every 5 minutes. For record-keeping workload and data analysis reasons, I only manually enter my glucose data into my iPhone-hosted medical AI system every 15 minutes, but the real physiological period is indeed close to 5 minutes. This creates a middle-frequency metabolic oscillation, thousands of cycles per day, every day, for the past 36 years since 1990. In physics and engineering, middle-frequency waves are the most dangerous for structural fatigue. They strike repeatedly with enough energy to weaken the material. In physiology, These glucose cycles produced endothelial damage, vascular stiffness, vascular calcification, kidney microfiltration injury, coronary artery narrowing, brain small vessel fragility. Based on my own research findings, almost 80% of mortality results from vascular damage, which is largely irreversible because the cells of the blood vessel wall have already been injured. Organs can be partially self-repaired, but cellular damage is most likely irreversible. This explains why my diabetes caused the greatest direct damage to my kidney, heart, and brain. From a wave frequency perspective, glucose sits exactly in the destructive zone, where repeated loading accumulates irreversible harm. Therefore, weight started the problem, but glucose did most of the damage. Blood pressure wave, high frequency trigger, 17 mHz, after my stroke on June 21, 2025, to control emotional stress, induced acute hypertension, emotional stress, sympathetic activation, blood pressure spike. I measured my blood pressure 16 to 20 times a day during waking hours, almost once every hour, switching between wrist and upper arm. Cuffs requires at least from 1 to 2 minutes, so I observed that my BP period is about 1 minute with frequency of 17 mHz. This is a high-frequency wave. High-frequency waves do not create cumulative deformation. They act like shock loads. If the blood vessel structure is already weakened by diabetes, a fast blood pressure spike causes sudden rupture, such as my hemorrhagic stroke in the pons area on June 21, 2025. On that day of my stroke, an emotional stress event caused a rapid spike to 175 mm of mercury in midday. The artery wall, already stiff and calcified from decades of diabetes, glucose damage, ruptured. My blood pressure was not the root cause of my cerebral microvessel calcification. My acute blood pressure spike served only as the trigger. Why glucose caused the biggest damage? Frequency-based reasoning. Weight wave, too slow to cause daily mechanical injury. Glucose wave, perfect frequency to cause long-term fatigue. BP wave, too fast to accumulate energy but strong enough to trigger rupture. Therefore, obesity started my metabolic disorder. Type 2 diabetes and glucose instability built up 36 years of vascular damage. And finally, one acute hypertension event triggered my stroke. This multi-wave explanation matches both basic physics laws and fundamental pathophysiological principles. VMT version. Energy domain explanation of the same three waves. The VMT model converts deformation into stress, strain, and cumulative energy. Each cycle contributes a stress-strain area. The shape and size of that area show how much irreversible damage is stored in the structure. Weight is a low-frequency, low-energy wave. Its strain rate is small. Its cumulative energy is small but persistent. It shifts the baseline but does not directly destroy the vessel wall. Glucose is a medium-frequency, high-energy wave. Its strain rate is moderate but repeated endlessly. When multiplied by the stress input from food, exercise, insulin resistance, and metabolic overload, the VMT energy area becomes very large. Over 36 years, this energy becomes the dominant source of irreversible damage. This is why my glucose VMT energy is the largest contributor to my kidney deterioration, my heart stiffness and 5 times of cardiovascular attacks, and my recent brain microvessel fragility. Blood pressure is a high-frequency, low to moderate energy wave. Its cumulative VMT energy is much smaller than glucose, because the strain cycles are too fast to accumulate large area. But a sudden spike greatly increases instantaneous strain and produces a sharp stress peak. This does not create most of the long-term damage, but it can produce the final stroke through a dangerous vascular rupture. In VMT language, weight is baseline shift, glucose is cumulative energy buildup, BP spike is instantaneous overload that breaks the system. This pattern matches my lifetime chronic disease progression. Using an engineering analogy, weight represents the design and construction quality of a bridge. Glucose is similar to the daily heavy truck traffic that repeatedly loads the bridge. Acute hypertension is like a hurricane or earthquake that delivers the final force that triggers the bridge to collapse. The above description reflects what I suddenly realized in Drive Schwartz's office at Stanford University on September 11, 2025, while viewing the CT images of my cerebral microvascular calcification. That moment brought back my from 1972 to 1975 MIT lectures from Professor Jones on the dynamic plastic behavior of structures. TDA version. Shape, continuity, and connectivity explanation. TDA work does not care about formulas or equations. It cares about geometric shape. Each variable traces a curve in a multidimensional space. When I map weight, glucose, and blood pressure as 3 time-dependent dimensions, weight creates a slow drifting backbone curve. Glucose creates dense, tightly folded loops that show heavy local bending. Blood pressure creates fine, rapid oscillations along the outer layer. This is what the TDA geometric shape shows. The largest deformation of the health manifold comes from glucose. The geometric manifold bends inward, toward high calcification and low elasticity zones. Weight forms the long-term trajectory, but glucose creates the local curvature that weakens structural connectivity. Furthermore, BP spikes appear as sharp points where the manifold is thin, indicating weak structural integrity. In TDA language, weight is slow backbone, glucose is main bending and cracking force, BP is thin fragile edges where rupture occurs. Unified interpretation, physics engineering, plus VMT plus TDA plus pathophysiology. All four frameworks converge. 1. Wave theory shows glucose as the most damaging frequency. 2. VMT shows glucose as the largest cumulative energy. 3. TDA shows glucose as the dominant bending of the health manifold. 4. Pathophysiology shows glucose as the main cause of endothelial injury and vascular calcification. Therefore, the conclusion is consistent. Weight started my chronic disease. Glucose caused decades of vascular structural damage. Blood pressure triggered the stroke rupture at the weakest point. Conclusion: my stroke was not a random event. It was the final outcome of a multi-decade interaction among three biological waves: weight, low-frequency baseline deformation; glucose, middle-frequency cumulative vascular damage; blood pressure, high-frequency acute triggering load. This multi-domain explanation provides a new way to understand metabolic diseases, organ damage, and stroke risk. It integrates mathematics, geometry, physics, energy, engineering, viscoplasticity, pathophysiology, obesity, diabetes, hypertension, calcification, stroke, VMT energy, modeling, and TDA geometric shape analysis into one consistent framework. Once the glucose wave weakens the structure, a single BP spike can release all the stored damage at once. This is the truth revealed by my data, my models, and my lived experience. The geometric shape tells the same story as the frequency domain, knowledge of physics, and the viscoplastic energy principles of mechanical engineering. By further combining these insights with the pathophysiological illustrations of biomedicine, this article is qualified to be one of my Viscoplastopology, VPT, research archives. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only, and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.